The choice Yoda made after Order 66 was more calculated than most people realize. When the last Grand Master of the Jedi Order selected a planet for exile, he passed over hundreds of remote worlds to settle on Dagobah, a fog-choked swamp crawling with predators. Dozens of planets had no Imperial presence. Some offered actual shelter, clean water, and breathable air. However, Yoda chose the swamp, and the real question isn't why he hid, but why he chose to hide there. According to canon sources, particularly the Clone Wars series, Yoda first visited Dagobah during the war, years before Order 66. He did not find the planet through charts or military reports, and instead, the spirit of Qui-Gon Jinn guided him there. Qui-Gon had learned to keep his mind alive after passing, and through his power, he could speak with the living under certain conditions. During an important time in the war, he reached out to Yoda with a mission that would change the course of the Grand Master's life. The instructions were strict and left no room for doubt. Yoda had to travel alone. He could not tell the Jedi Council where he was going, and he could not bring anyone with him or record his route. These rules seemed extreme, but Qui-Gon made it clear that the secrecy was necessary for everything that would follow. Yoda, the leader of the entire Jedi Order, obeyed without question. He left Coruscant without explanation. When he landed on Dagobah, he found a world that was nothing like what he expected. The planet was not calm, but instead filled with predators, poisonous plants, and ground soft enough to swallow a ship whole. Thick fog covered everything, and the air was heavy with moisture. Dangerous creatures lurked in every shadow, and survival required constant awareness. Yet, Qui-Gon's spirit called Dagobah pure. This description seemed to go against everything Yoda could see around him. The swamp was hostile in every way, and nothing about it suggested purity or peace. But Qui-Gon was not speaking about the surface conditions. He was speaking about the Force. The Force worked differently there. The living Force, which flows through all creatures, was very strong on Dagobah, and life grew everywhere, wild and aggressive. Every corner of the planet was filled with living things fighting to survive and grow. At the same time, the cosmic force, which connects all things across time and space, also gathered there with unusual strength. These two parts of the Force rarely came together with such strength in one place. Because of this, Dagobah was not peaceful, but flooded with energy. This created something no other planet could offer. The Force on Dagobah did not behave normally, and instead created a kind of noise, a constant, very strong signal that drowned out everything else. On most worlds, a trained Force user could sense individual beings, track movements, and detect emotions. On Dagobah, all of that became impossible because the background energy was simply too loud. For a Jedi trying to disappear, this noise was more useful than any fortress. The Jedi Council never learned about Dagobah. Yoda returned to Coruscant and went back to his duties without saying where he had been. No one questioned his absence, and no one pressed him for details. The war continued, the Senate grew more corrupt, and Palpatine's power grew with each passing month. Through all of it, Yoda kept the planet secret, telling no one what he had found or why it mattered. This choice proved important after Order 66. When the Republic fell and the Empire rose from its ashes, Yoda already knew exactly where to go. He did not need to search for a hiding place or scramble to find safety. He had one ready, a location prepared years in advance for exactly this moment. His return to Dagobah after the fall was simple. He just left, slipping away from the chaos without drawing attention. No pursuit followed, no Imperial forces tracked him, and no Inquisitors sensed his presence because the Force itself seemed to swallow him whole. Yoda vanished as completely as if he had never existed. Imperial scanners could detect life signs and energy signals across huge distances, making it nearly impossible for anyone to hide for long. But Dagobah created so much living and Force activity that sensors could not pick out individual readings. The data came back as a jumbled mess with no clear patterns, and any officer looking at a scan of Dagobah would see chaos and move on to the next target. As shown in The Empire Strikes Back, Luke Skywalker experienced this firsthand when he arrived years later. His X-Wing's instruments became unreliable on approach, giving readings that made no sense. Navigation failed and pointed him in the wrong direction. Targeting computers gave information that did not match what his eyes could see. Because of this, Luke crashed into the swamp since his technology simply could not handle what Dagobah was showing it. The planet broke his equipment before he even landed. The Emperor and Vader were among the most powerful Force users in history. They commanded fleets and armies of hunters dedicated to wiping out every trace of the old order. They found and ended Jedi on dozens of worlds, tracking them across the galaxy with patience and skill. However, they never found Yoda. Dagobah removed him from the awareness of everyone who might have looked for him. For 20 years, the greatest Jedi in history lived in a swamp, and his most powerful enemies never knew. The dark side played a key role in making this possible. Dagobah contains something that should have made it wrong for any Jedi: a cave filled with dark side energy. The cave existed long before Yoda arrived, and its origins remain unclear even now. What is clear is that it sent out darkness all the time, giving off a signal that any Force user could detect from far away. The dark side radiated from that cave like heat from a fire, impossible to miss for anyone with the ability to sense it. For most Jedi, this would be a reason to stay away. Dark side places drew Sith attention because they were useful for dark side training and practices. They could also change anyone who stayed too long, slowly pulling them toward dark influence and twisted thinking. A Jedi seeking safety would normally avoid such locations at all costs. Yoda made the opposite choice. He settled near the cave on purpose, building his small hut close enough that the cave's energy surrounded him at all times. Every day, he lived within reach of that darkness. This was not an accident or a matter of convenience, but a carefully made plan with a specific goal in mind. The Darkside Cave was not a danger to Yoda, but his main defense. According to various Star Wars sources about Imperial Inquisitors, these hunters tracked Jedi using the Force itself. They were trained to sense the light side and follow it to its source. When a Jedi acted with kindness or used their powers to help others, they created a ripple in the Force, and that ripple could be traced back to them like footprints in snow. Lightside energy left trails that skilled hunters could follow. The more a Jedi behaved like a Jedi, showing compassion, protecting the innocent, using their abilities for good, the easier they became to find. Many Jedi fell because they could not stop themselves from helping people, and each act of kindness gave the Inquisitors another clue. Dagobah's Darkside Cave solved this problem completely. Because of this, Yoda's energy, no matter how strong, vanished into the noise created by the cave. It was like trying to hear a whisper in the middle of a thunderstorm. The smaller sound simply could not be detected. The process worked like opposite electrical charges. Light and dark existed in tension, with each able to cancel out the other under the right conditions. Yoda placed himself at the exact spot where his light side signal and the cave's dark side output balanced out. The two energies met and canceled each other out, and where Yoda stood, the Force registered as neutral, neither light nor dark, just empty space. Yoda understood how the energies worked and used that knowledge to create his own disappearance. The Emperor knew about darkside locations since he had visited many during his rise to power. He understood their value and their dangers. When Imperial forces scanned Dagobah and detected the cave's signal, they reached a simple conclusion. The planet was useless because no Jedi would choose to live near such darkness. The very thing that should have attracted attention became the reason no one investigated. That belief kept Yoda's enemies away for 2 decades. The plan worked exactly as Yoda intended. However, living near the Darkside Cave for 20 years came with a cost that could not be avoided. The cave did not just send out energy, but affected everyone within range. Visions came to those who lived nearby, often showing painful truths or possible futures. Emotional pressure built over time, pushing against the mind and testing strength. These effects touched anyone who stayed close to the cave, and Yoda was no exception. For the Empire, Dagobah remained a dead end throughout their reign. Scanners showed nothing useful. Force detection found only a cave, and no records suggested the planet mattered in any way. Officers who reviewed the data saw a worthless swamp world and moved their attention elsewhere. The protection worked exactly as planned, but the cave demanded something else from Yoda in return. something far more personal than simple exposure to dark side energy. Dagobah was not the place where Yoda waited in comfort, but a place of constant challenge, not with enemies, but with himself. The protection the planet offered came at a cost, and that cost was paid in suffering. According to the Clone Wars series, the cave showed Yoda Order 66 before it happened, clone troopers turning on their generals, the temple burning, his students falling across dozens of worlds. He returned to Coruscant knowing what was coming, yet he could not stop it. Yoda did not flee to Dagobah to escape something unexpected or to hide from a surprise attack. Instead, he retreated to a place that had already showed him his failure in clear detail. Every day on that planet reminded him that he had received warnings and still could not prevent what happened. The common view of Yoda's exile treats it as survival, a smart retreat to stay alive for future resistance. Yoda hid so well that Jedi would not be completely wiped out, and his survival preserved hope for the future. This explanation makes sense on the surface, but the cave's visions suggest something more personal was happening. Yoda accepted responsibility for what happened to the Jedi Order. The Grand Master, who had trained Jedi for centuries, watched his order fall because he could not act on the warnings he received. That weight settled on him and never lifted. Dagobah was not about hiding from the Empire, but about carrying that weight. Yoda could have chosen an easier world, but he picked a location that forced him to face his guilt every day. The cave did not show him temptation or promises of power. It showed him truths he did not want to see. The students he had failed to save, the warnings he had dismissed, the pride that had blinded the Jedi to the Sith among them. Most Jedi would have resisted, but Yoda survived by accepting what the cave showed him. Over 20 years, the weight of his failure changed from burden to foundation. He learned from it, drawing wisdom from the pain, and that understanding shaped how he would eventually train Luke Skywalker. Luke would come to Dagobah carrying his own doubts, his own weaknesses, and his own potential for failure. He needed a teacher who understood what it meant to fall short and keep going anyway. Yoda's exile gave him something no comfortable hiding place could have provided: the experience of being broken and rebuilt. The price of the shield was 20 years of facing his worst moments, and he paid it willingly. He returned to Dagobah knowing what waited for him and accepted the pain, because running to safety while pretending the failure never happened would have been its own kind of giving in. When Luke arrived years later, he faced the same cave. His experience would differ, but the test remained the same. The strongest protection Yoda had was not the dark side cave or the Force noise, but absence from records. Technology could be fooled, and the Force could be blocked, but the simplest protection simply does not exist in any database anyone could search. The planet had been erased long before Yoda needed it. According to the Clone Wars, Qui-Gon's instructions during Yoda's first visit required total secrecy. No one could know about Dagobah under any circumstances. The Jedi Council, despite leading the Order and having access to all its secrets, was never told about the planet or Yoda's visit there. This was not a mistake, but a choice made on purpose. This secrecy kept Dagobah outside official records entirely. The Jedi kept detailed files on nearly every system in the galaxy, built over thousands of years of exploration and study. Their archives were among the most complete in existence, containing information that even the Republic government did not have. Any planet in those archives could be accessed by the Empire after the Order fell. When Palpatine's forces took the Jedi Temple, they gained access to everything stored there. Records, maps, member files, and historical data all fell into Imperial hands. Any world the Jedi had visited or studied became known to the Empire. Dagobah avoided this fate because it was never recorded in the first place. The Council did not question its absence since they had no reason to look into a planet they had never heard of. No one can search for what they do not know exists. Even Obi-Wan Kenobi did not know where Yoda went. The two surviving Jedi Masters made a key decision after Order 66. They would separate and go to different parts of the galaxy. They would watch over the Skywalker twins, protecting them from a distance, and they would have no contact with each other until the time was right. This meant neither could give up the other's location, even under pressure. Harsh questioning, mind probes, or simple accidents could not reveal what was not known. Yoda knew Obi-Wan was on Tatooine watching over Luke, but Obi-Wan did not know Yoda was on Dagobah. The one-sided knowledge was on purpose, because if Obi-Wan was captured, he could not give away Yoda's hiding place, since he simply did not have that information. The shared silence protected both planets. Tatooine and Dagobah survived the entire Imperial era without discovery. Luke grew up on one, while Yoda waited on the other, and neither location was found because the needed information existed only in minds that were never captured. The Empire could not force secrets out of people who did not have those secrets. But they could not chase what did not exist in any system they could reach. Luke's journey to Dagobah in The Empire Strikes Back showed how complete the erasure was. He could not find the planet through normal methods because no navigation computer had its location, and no database listed it. Luke reached Dagobah only through Force guidance, a vision that showed him where to go. This was something the Empire could not copy or block because it did not depend on technology or records. The Force itself led Luke to his teacher, going around every system that might have tracked him. Even accidental discovery was stopped. Dagobah stayed hidden throughout the entire reign of the Empire, from the first days of Order 66 to the fall of the Second Death Star. After the Empire fell, the secrecy continued. Luke kept Dagobah's location protected even when there was no longer direct danger. The planet where he trained, where Yoda passed, and where he faced his inner darkness, he did not share its location with the New Republic or anyone else. Dagobah existed only in bits and pieces and rumors, and those who knew where it was could be counted on one hand. The secret remained a secret even after the reason for keeping it had passed. The Jedi Order had fallen partly because it had become too organized. Its knowledge was recorded and stored in systems that could be captured. When the Empire took the Temple, it gained access to almost everything the Jedi had known. That information helped the Empire hunt down survivors for years. Dagobah stood for the opposite approach. It was knowledge that existed only in living memory and could not be taken because it was never written down. When everything fell, the escape route was ready because someone had planned ahead. But Dagobah had one more job to do. Dagobah did not accept visitors without testing them. The planet measured everyone's character through challenges that had nothing to do with fighting or power. Strength with a lightsaber meant nothing there. What mattered was something deeper. Yoda had been chosen for Dagobah, guided there by Qui-Gon's spirit, prepared through visions, and picked for a purpose that took decades to unfold. The planet accepted him because he was meant to be there. Luke Skywalker would not receive the same welcome. Instead, he would be tested. The test began before Luke even met his teacher. According to The Empire Strikes Back, when Luke crashed his X-Wing in the swamp and climbed out, he met what seemed to be a small, strange creature. This being appeared harmless, maybe even foolish, with odd speech patterns and strange behavior. It went through Luke's supplies without asking, made annoying comments, and generally acted like a pest. Dagobah tested Luke through failure. He failed Yoda's first test of patience, then failed to understand the cave's warning about his own darkness, and later failed to lift his X-Wing because his mind had already decided what was impossible. Eventually, visions of his friends in danger pulled him away because his training was complete, and he rushed off to face Vader, paying the price for that choice. Yet Dagobah's true test was never about any single failure. It was whether Luke would return after failing so completely, and he did. Humbled and aware of how much he still did not know, he came back to finish what he started. That willingness to face failure and keep going was what mattered most. On this final visit, Yoda completed his training and passed on, knowing the last Jedi had been trained. Those who passed its tests carried something forward, and those who failed were forgotten. One matter, however, remains unsettled. Darth Vader spent 2 decades hunting Jedi, yet the Grand Master who had fought him on Coruscant, the last true part of the Old Order, Vader never searched for him. The reasons behind that choice, and what the Empire actually knew about Yoda after Order 66, reveal a side of the story that few have fully explored. We cover that story in detail on this channel.